I am not a quitter, and neither are you. Most people who study math are not quitters. They work hard because math is difficult, it takes practice, and it takes time. I want to make it really clear that this video is not about giving up or knowing when to quit. It's about warning signs. Signs that something is wrong. Signs that maybe you're in the wrong class. Just because you're in the wrong class doesn't mean you're bad at math. It doesn't mean you're not working hard enough. It doesn't mean it's your fault. Sometimes you take a class and you're just not ready for it. And there could be a lot of reasons for that. You could have too many responsibilities. You could have too much work. You might have kids and expectations and just other things that life throws at you, right? Life is not easy. Life is hard. And when you throw math on top of that, it gets even harder. These are really bad warning signs. And I mean really bad. And as bad as they may sound, please don't take them as a reason to give up or drop your class. Instead, use these as a way to self-reflect. What can you do to improve your situation? Because this is all fixable. It really all is. Okay, let's talk about 3 warning signs right now. Warning sign number 1. You don't understand anything in class, and it seems like everyone around you does. And I think most people have experienced this to some extent, but it's a pretty bad feeling when it happens to you. You go to class, you sit down, you start taking notes, the teacher is lecturing, and you maybe understand a little bit, but next thing you know, you don't know what's going on. You want to raise your hand, but there are students in the class that are participating, they're answering questions, and you just don't get it. I remember one time in graduate school, the professor asked, "What is the average value of the function?" And this guy says, 1 over x. And I'm thinking, I have no idea what he's talking about. No idea at all. Again, it's not just about not understanding. It's you not understanding and the feeling that everyone else around you gets it. That really makes it worse because it makes it seem like it's your fault. Remember, it's not your fault. There's a reason you don't understand. And it's always solvable. Warning sign number 2. You go home, you try to do the homework. It doesn't make any sense. And not only that, it's nothing like what you did in class. In other words, it's so far removed from what was done in class that it feels impossible. This usually happens when you're assigned problems from a worksheet. For example, say you're taking a class and you're using a certain book, and then you're assigned some homework that the professor makes up and puts on some type of worksheet that they hand out or a PDF that they upload. So it's problems created by the professor that seem to have nothing to do with what's taught in class. That is a very, very big red flag because that means that you're seeing problems that you're expected to do, but you don't really have the training to do those problems because that type of material wasn't really covered in class. A lot of professors will create their own problems to make students think just a little bit more beyond the basics, and that's fine. So what I'm talking about here is just the next level. Like, none of it makes sense. As a concrete example, when I was in graduate school, there was a professor who was teaching Calculus 1, and she would give measure theory questions to her Calc 1 students. The class was destroyed. I think the class started with over 100 students. And at the end, when we were grading finals, I think there was maybe 23 final exams we graded. The third warning sign is probably the worst one. This is the situation where you study as much as possible for the test. You go over all of the homework. You go over all of your notes. You go over the review if there is one. You feel like a master. You walk in. You take the test is nothing like what you studied, and you do terribly. That is a very, very big red flag in my opinion. And I'm not one to say, oh, it's the professor's fault, but in situations like that, where there's like this big disconnect between what's being taught and what's being tested on, In situations like that, I think you might be in the wrong class. And for situations like this, there's nothing you can really do about it except maybe reach out to the professor and try to study more. But that's probably one of the biggest warnings, in my opinion, because that's something that's almost beyond your control. I want to emphasize that this has only happened to me once, okay? One time in one class did I feel like I had a test where everything was just so far-fetched from what was done in class. And I ended up getting an A in the class. It was just one test. It didn't happen again after that test because pretty much everyone failed the test. And I think the professor was like, oh no, what did I do? I made the test too hard. And then so fast forward to test 2, things were resolved. So if that does happen to you, just know that it might get better. So for the first warning sign where you barely feel like you understand anything and it feels like everyone else does, one easy solution for this is to make friends with people who seem like they get it. You know, if it feels like everyone else gets it and you don't, it's probably because you're lacking something. You're lacking some prereq, you're just lacking some math that everyone else has. Maybe you're taking a calculus class and a lot of the students in your class already knew calculus from high school. You know, maybe their background is better than yours. They're just better at math because they've seen more math. So that's nothing that says that you're dumb or that something is wrong with you, right? It's not your fault. That can be easily remedied by just making friends and trying to join study groups. For the second warning sign where you try to do the homework and it's pretty much nothing like what was covered in class, the number one thing you can do in that case is go to your professor for help with the actual homework problems, because that will at least bring to their attention that students are struggling. And I guarantee you this, if the homework is nothing like what was covered in class, there are many students who will be seeking help from the professor on this particular homework. It's very common when that happens. I know whenever I give like some extra credit question that's, you know, beyond the scope of what's taught in the classroom, people always want to get help with the questions. If you're in the situation where the third warning sign is something you're experiencing, again, go to the professor and seek help. Ask for solutions or at least partial solutions or answers to the questions that you got wrong on the test so you can see where you went wrong. This does two things. One, you'll learn a lot of mathematics. And two, it lets the professor know that, hey, maybe there's something wrong here, because I guarantee you if the test was nothing like what was covered in class, you're not the only one that's asking questions. And the more people that ask questions, the more aware this professor is going to become that, hey, maybe something is wrong. Maybe I need to tone it down. Maybe I need to start putting questions on the test that are a little bit more similar to the concepts that are being covered in the classroom. So those are 3 warning signs that you should look out for. And I want to emphasize how different these are from the regular difficulties that people encounter. It's normal to struggle in the homework, but when your homework is nothing like what's covered in class, that's a different story. It's normal to be confused in class, but when you're confused in class and everyone else gets it, that's a different story. Likewise, it's normal to struggle on tests, but when the test reflects something that was not covered in class, that's a different story. So these are extreme situations that hopefully you never have to encounter. And if you do, hopefully this video has given you some tips for how to deal with them. And remember, you know, dropping your class is not the end of the world, right? So people quit all the time for all kinds of reasons. And I'm not saying you should quit, but I'm saying, you know, there are options. At least in the United States, when you withdraw from a class, you get what's called a W on your transcript. Different schools have different codes. Some put like a number next to the W. Some just use the letter W. W stands for withdrawal. And what that means is basically you're no longer in the class, you don't get your money back, and it doesn't count towards your GPA. It does sometimes have impact when it comes to financial aid. So if you're getting money from the government to go to school, it can impact that. But typically, in every instance I've known, a withdrawal does not affect your GPA. A withdrawal also, in my opinion, does not really look bad. People withdraw for all kinds of reasons. So if you have a couple withdrawals on your transcripts and people ask, you can just tell them the truth, or you could say whatever you want. It's really nobody's business because it doesn't say so on the transcript. It just says W. So in my opinion, it doesn't really reflect negatively upon your performance. I myself have 2 withdrawals over the years, and no big deal. I was able to get a few degrees. I hope this video has been helpful to you. And remember, don't quit and don't give up. Keep doing math. Good luck to you.